Special welcome to another podcast. I am excited to be in conversation with Alinani from Lusaka, Zambia. Alinani, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Sarah.
It's so lovely to have you on the show today. Just to start our conversation, I would love you to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and just the journey that you've walked to get to where you are. I see that now you are the newly elected ISACA president for the Lusaka chapter. Please, just tell us about who you are and the journey that you've walked this far.
All right. So I'm an ICT professional. I grew up in the small mining town of Chingola in Zambia, and did my primary school there, did my secondary school in Lusaka at David Kaunda Technical National College, after which I went to the Zambia Center for Accountancy Studies and pursued a degree in IT or in computing that was under or with the University of Greenwich in the UK. Of course, when I was done with it, I ended up working for the Elections Commission here in Zambia, and of course, working on a few other consultancy projects outside my main area of work. I love to volunteer a lot, and over the years, I have worked as a software engineer, but over time, I have transitioned into IT governance, hence finding myself with ISACA, which is a thought leader and an institution that looks at issues to do with IT governance, risk, cybersecurity, and audit. So I volunteered with ISACA for the past 6 years. I started out as a webmaster. Then for the next 2 years, I was the vice president and recently elected as president of our local chapter. I also serve on the ICT Association of Zambia board as the technical chairperson. So I'm basically in charge of technical affairs that the association and its members basically would look alike. So I'm a married man, and I have a beautiful wife and a handsome son. I've been married for the past 8 years. So yeah, that's a bit about myself.
Beautiful, beautiful. I am very big on family and work-life balance as well outside people's career. We know that people are family men, like you're saying, you're a husband, you are a father. What does balance look like in your life with your 5-year-old? Being in a very pressured industry, the IT industry is a highly pressured industry. Do you seek any balance there? How does that look like in your world?
So I think when it comes to balancing work and my personal life or family life, I always get relief from my father, who I think that's one thing he always emphasized: spend much time with the family. He couldn't spend as much time as he wanted with us, and so he would always talk about. So it's something that always rings at the back of my mind. And so IT is pretty involving, and there are times when you have late nights. Sometimes you will not go home for 2 days, But the idea then is that when you have less busy times, so when I have less busy times, I purposefully then dedicate to my family, and that includes my son and my wife, and I'll ask them, okay, what do you want me to do? Because again, spending time with them means different things to each and every one of them. And so I try as much as possible to be as goofy as possible with my son. Sometimes my neighbors look at me and Wonder why I'm behaving in such a way. But for him, it's fun, and that's how it works. So in terms of having a balance, most of us would think of doing a bit of work and a bit of family life, and like a seesaw that would balance up. But the reality is that is very difficult to do, and so you find that like a seesaw again, sometimes work is heavier, is weightier, and you have to focus on work. And when work is not that weightier, you pull the scales to the other side, and that's the only way I managed to achieve that equilibrium. Yeah. So from
Beautiful,
experience, yeah,
beautiful, beautiful. So it's all about being deliberate, right?
exactly.
Um,
Purposeful. Yeah.
yeah, I love the word purposeful. So then let's get into the technical conversation. I actually just enjoyed your story and the journey that you've walked, when it comes to your career path, how that even when you were in school, you were this enterprising person who was building systems and you were monetizing that. Um, let's get started by probably defining what innovation is. Innovation is a buzzword that is on everybody's mind. Let's start our conversation by defining what is innovation.
All right. So in layman's terms, I would describe or define innovation as a new way of doing things, a new way of doing things that will either make life easier, simplified, and so it's either you're bringing about a new service, a new product that will simplify life, that will generate more revenue, and at times that will differentiate you from the next person, organization, and so basically a new way of doing things. And this new way of doing things basically would be as a result of probably new techniques or new processes. Um, if we are going to do uh, grilled chicken, I may come up with an innovation that will allow me to do spicy grilled chicken in a way that no one has ever thought of. My son one time says to me, Daddy, I want us to make Nshima ice cream. Now, Nshima is our local staple food. And he says, I want to make Nshima ice cream. I'm looking at him thinking, buddy, that just can't work. But after some time, I'm thinking to myself, Nshima ice cream. But just imagine if someone did actually pull it off. Nshima ice cream. That's an innovation in itself. And well, it would bring a lot of fun and, a better way or a nicer way of having our staple food. So that's what innovation is all about to me. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I love the way you've brought it home. Hey, I suppose the little ones are more innovative because, their minds think out of the box.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
True.
yeah. So then let's try and bring value to organizations. For organizations that are innovative, there is an innovative culture that is cultivated within an organization. How can an organization cultivate or, encourage a culture of innovation?
And so it always starts with a tone at the top.
Mm.
From my experience and observation, it always starts with a tone at the top, the board level. If the board does not embrace innovation, then everything downhill goes wrong. So once the board does embrace innovation, this not by word of mouth, but you see this, for example, in the organization's values. The organization I work for, the Elections Commission, one of our values is innovation. And so this means, at the topmost, we value innovation. And when that happens, we then put in place strategies that encourage innovation. And so the first thing would be to have it as one of our key values. Secondly, um, allow employees to take risks, to experiment, look for new ways of doing things, encourage them to fail. Because I think the fear in most cases is this thing will fail, whatever I'm trying to do will fail, it will not work out, it will look bad. But if we ask ourselves, the Wright brothers, how many times did they try to develop an airplane or fly and failed? So if we can't encourage experimentation and taking risks within our organizations, it means then we are likely not to innovate. Another factor that would probably push is the ability or the desire for the organization to be always at the forefront, to be to always be the market leader in their provision of services. And to do that, what you will find is that an innovation section, research and development section is set up where people whose purpose is basically to look for better ways of delivering a service or a product. I'll give you an example of FNB. I think both in South Africa and Zambia, and maybe much more in South Africa, it's considered, I think, to be at the forefront of innovations. And I remember a few years ago, I think 5, 6 years ago, they talked about having to being able to allow customers to open their own accounts just using their phone. You take a selfie, fill in your details, and like no one was doing that. But because they want to be ahead of the curve, that's an innovation that they came through with. And I think it's something that others have followed through. So that also, such a culture encourages innovation and rewarding people who come up with innovation within the organization and things seem to work out. Because at the end of the day, that innovation will set you apart as an organization, give you that competitive edge. And secondly, you will get more revenue as a result of that particular innovation. So again, if this is something that is starting at board level, we see that the strategies that come through at operations and tactical levels, management level, will always support that innovation. And so I think these are some of the strategies that can be used within organizations to encourage a culture of innovation.
Beautiful, beautiful, and well said. Before we started recording, I enjoyed listening to the kind of innovations that you have done in your organization when it comes to digital transformation. Do you just want to talk about that, from your organization perspective? I love the fact that you guys were COVID ready. Before COVID hit the shores, you had already started putting in place systems that allowed you to actually flourish when everybody was scampering in all directions, because you had already started the journey of digital transformation. You just carried on. Do you just want to give us a picture of how innovation has played out in your organization?
All right. So I'll give you a wide spectrum of innovations that I have worked on, those that worked and those that came before their time and worked but did not work very well.
Yeah.
So, as I've said, I'm an entrepreneur. I have an entrepreneurship mindset. So, apart from my day job, I do consultancy, I do software development outside, and help other organizations in their digital transformation journey as well by just offering very practical solutions. And when I say practical, I mean taking it one step at a time, because most of the time people want to leap from 0 to 100 when it comes to digital transformation. So I'll start with my organization. So basically what we do is conduct elections. We register voters, and when we do that, we come up with a voters register that is used in an election. Now, the capturing of data for voter registration is quite a tedious job. And what used to happen 15, 20 years ago is that you would go out with a piece of paper, you know, your OMR forms that you shed, you'd
Yeah.
go out with those, people would shed, and you would come back, scan those OMR forms, and once they are scanned, you would then be able to get that data, print cards, go back in the field again to the people and tell them to come collect their cards. So what would happen most of the time is people would either not find their cards, or cards would go missing, and so not everyone would get their cards. I think that was 20 years ago. That was the issue. And so someone thought to say, what if we had a system that would allow you to register and get your card instantly? And so they had that thought. And they thought, what would it take? Now, I was not there at that time. I found this journey halfway. And so they came up with specifications and said, okay, it would mean we'll have to come up with a system that is able to capture data electronically, that's a laptop, capture a fingerprint, that's a fingerprint reader, and a camera for an image, and a printer to print out the card. And that's what happened. And so that system was rolled out, and people were able to register and access their voters' cards instantly on the spot. And so benefits to the organization, value to the organization, is that the budget um, dropped, because remember, initially you would come back, process, go back into the field, give out cards. All that is money, and so you're giving money, you're giving cards on the spot, and so you're saving a lot of money. There's no inconvenience to the voter. People are satisfied. The whole process is one that is looked at with integrity. And so that was 10, 15 years ago. And that was good at that time. A few years down the line, 10 years down the line, we said, okay, we have this, it works well. How else can we improve this process? And so we said, let's do online voter registration. At this point, everyone is on 3G, 4G, smartphones are everywhere. We are no longer using, the small polyphonic feature phones that we were using. And so we look at the environment, and we also look at the fact that we need a lot of youths to register, and a lot of youths have smartphones, are always on Facebook, Twitter. And so we say, let us have online voter registration. And that is the path we went. Develop mobile applications and web applications that allow them to simply fill in their details and send a picture, a portrait of their face, and then walk into a registration center, get their card in under 2 minutes, because there's no data capture happening. Initially, it would take 10, 15 minutes for someone to have their data captured, and then they would need to verify that their data has been captured. But this time, we push that responsibility to the person who's registering. I know, Sarah, you know how to spell your names correctly. I may error, but you will spell them correctly. And so we push that. So the validation and all that. And once you come, it takes 2 minutes. And so we shorten the queues. The amount of time it takes to get a voter's card is reduced to 2 minutes. And so that was an innovation that really helped us during the COVID period, because one thing was crowds were not encouraged. And so you don't want to keep a lot of people in one place for a long time. And so queues needed to be processed quicker. And that is how we managed to process these queues quicker. Of course, it was a parallel system. Others still went with the old system, and the others still had to go with the new system. Just like it is with any system, as you implement a new system, you need to run them in parallel. So that's something we innovated and worked. In my my consultancy outside my work, a few years ago, I think 7 years ago, Wow, time flies. So, a friend of mine, who happens to be my brother, still my friend, developed this system that was a cloud-based real-time bus ticketing system. Now, again, uh, Sarah, as I mentioned before, I have this habit of monetizing school projects. And so this was my brother's project. I gave him the idea and I said, okay, it's been 7 years since I monetized the school project. And I told him, can we go back to the bus operator and have this idea floated to them that we can actually improve this small system that was for the school project. It was simply just keeping track of the sales you manually input. But I said, look, can we come up with something like an airline reservation system where people are going to be able to reserve seats from the comfort of their homes? And this had not been done before because you would have overbooking as a result of a real-time system not being in place. That had always been the challenge. And so at this point, I think in my software development journey, I was toying around with cloud-based real-time systems. That time I was playing with Firebase, a Google-based system, real-time system, and I said this can work. We can actually implement this. And so we proposed this to the bus operator and set up a system like airline reservation. You can actually go to Facebook and look for tamangatickets.com and see the whole journey of what happened there. Tamanga tickets or Tamanga ticketing on Facebook, and you see a lot of nice pictures. And so, what we did at that time was allowed people to book or reserve tickets from their homes and pay for them online in real time. Show up at the bus station with a QR code on their tablet or phones, have it scanned, and they'll get into the bus. And it worked perfectly. Um, one of the greatest systems, the best systems I've implemented. It worked across about 14 towns across the country, from the south to the north, and it was excellent. Um, Payment systems in Zambia at that time were not mature. We only had card payments. We did not have mobile money, uh, or it was there, but it was not, the adoption rate was really low. That was about 2015. Mobile money was still a challenge around that time. And so only people with a debit card or a credit card would actually purchase those tickets. And it was only a few that were lended. At that time, we still had people walking into game stores or ShopRite and not wanting to swipe. That was 2015. They would rather, there was an ATM, there's an ATM outside game stores at one of our malls, Manda Hill here. So someone would rather withdraw money from the ATM, get into the shop and buy something. That's not too long ago. Now, what more using your credit card online? So we are still on that journey. And so this innovation, I believe, so it worked for 2 3 years, but over time, as you come up with an innovation, it's not a charity. You're basically looking at how we're going to make money, how is it going to generate money for us. And in that process, we are looking at getting a commission of the ticket sales of those who buy online. And so we just have a few people buying online. And so we couldn't really sustain ourselves from that model. And so that business, unfortunately, we wound up, I think, after 4 years. And looking back, if it had been implemented in the last 2 years, especially during the COVID period, that is something that would have really, really worked well, because people would have been able to pay using mobile money platforms, their credit cards, and all that. And so that's one innovation to me that came earlier than its time, and it did teach me a number of experiences. And one of the critical experiences, or the most important experience it taught me, was that I was very focused on the technical side of the business and not the business side of the business. Each time I presented I pitched in front of judges in hackathons and the like, the only thing I would be interested in is showing them how wonderful this real-time system works. I mean, it took me a year to come up with this system. I was going to be proud of it, but the judges were really not interested in hearing how the real-time aspects work, but basically asking me questions like, when are you breaking even? What is your monthly income? Uh, how's your balance sheet looking at? What are your assets? And I was completely blank. I remember being asked, when are you breaking even? And I thought, I think next year. I had no idea what breaking even or how you would even calculate, your break even point. And there was this other guy who was a marketer, and looked at my idea, came up with a business proposal, and actually got funding for it worth about 500,000 back in 2015. And I was so angry because he comes to me and says, "Can I buy you off? Because I have the money, you have the technology." But you can imagine, because of ego, I said, my friend, there's no way. I mean, I may not understand the business, but there's no way I'm giving you my crown jewels and making this look like yours. He tried to do it, but he didn't have the technical capacity. He failed lamentably. But we also failed lamentably because we did not have the money to push this project further. In retrospect, I wish I did agree, because I think we'd be somewhere further with that project today. And so I learned that I needed to understand a bit of business as an IT person. It was not enough for me to just understand what software programming, but yes, you have developed. How do you sell this product? Because at the end of the day, you need to make a living. And so I actually pursued my MBA after that, which was an exciting journey, because then I did a bit of marketing, accounting, and everything that comes with the MBA. And yeah, it was exciting and really put me in a better position to look at IT strategically, as before, where I was just looking at it from a functional point. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I just love the innovative journey that you've walked, both at a personal level and, from the more formal perspective as well. But we all know that, no experience is wasted, right? You got valuable lessons from your innovation. And I think there's still more room, to grow more ideas of such a nature. Let's now bring the conversation to governance, IT governance. Um, a lot of people that are in information security, are big on IT governance, and I know that if you're a business unit leader or just an executive, you do need to understand a bit of this lingo. Otherwise, you just be depending on what the IT guys tell you. Let's start by defining what IT governance is. What is IT governance?
All right. So again, in layman's language, um, and because this is important to the decision makers to understand it at that point, at that level, IT governance are basically rules put in place to govern how IT is used for the benefit of the organization, so that the organization can realize value from their IT investments or IT endeavors that they conduct. For a long time, IT has been looked at as, my printer is not working, where's the IT guy? My screen cannot come, where's the IT guy? I do
Yeah.
not have internet, where's the IT guy? My phone has a problem. It's not charged, but someone says, where's the IT guy? Because the IT guy apparently knows everything. Um,
The magic man.
yeah, some time back, I had a boss somewhere else whose son had sport earphones. And he said, the IT guy, take to the IT guy, he's going to fix this for you. I have no idea how to fix this. So the IT guy is looked at as the expert in, such things. And that's basically how IT is looked at. You look at most of these movies and comedies that talk about IT. The IT department is either somewhere in the basement or in the corner, somewhere hidden away, and the weird IT guy just comes out when there's a problem here and there. And that's the depiction. But what we are trying to say now is that IT is an enabler of business. It is a driver of business. In some places, depending on your business model, enterprise strategy, IT may as well be, the alpha and omega of the organization. The entire organization is based on IT. Look at Uber. I mean, that's all IT. You can't run out. So IT, in such a case, is an enabler of business. It is the driver of business. And for it to take such a strategic role in an organization, it should be governed by certain principles, policies, and procedures so that there is smooth running of IT, because the organization actually then does depend on IT for its survival. And so this is where IT governance comes in. Yeah.
So I love the concept that you're bringing in to say, IT has become a very important aspect to business. It's become an imperative. We can no longer afford to have IT at the basement because that actually will become disastrous for the business. The whole conversation is that now from the leadership point of view that IT should be sitting at board level, at all the strategic positions, because it is such a crucial part of any organization or of any business, especially as we live out our businesses, our career lives in the digital economy. So then let's talk about the role of the CIO. What does this role involve, and why is it important that an organization has a CIO role sitting at a strategic level as part of a role that makes decisions even for business?
Yeah. So IT is considered differently, or taken differently, or acknowledged differently in different organizations. Others look at it as just an operational department, just there to keep the systems running. And so you find that probably they only have an IT manager who reports probably to the finance director. That will show you how IT is considered in that organization. And other organizations really realize that IT plays a strategic role in the survival of the organization. And so you have the person, or the head of IT, the person responsible for IT, actually being at the executive level. So you have titles like Chief Executive Officer, Director IT, or Chief Technology Officer. In the United States, I think you have got President of Technology, Vice President Technology, and such titles. But this is at the executive level. Now, we're saying that IT is supposed to take a strategic role in the operation or the direction that this organization actually takes. Now, who is supposed to ensure that IT does actually take that strategic role? Who ensures that IT is strategically aligned to enable the organization meet its strategic objectives? That is the role of the Chief Information Officer. Is the one who ensures that alignment. And so every organization is driven by its desire to derive benefits or profit. And this need is as a result of stakeholders. Every organization has got stakeholder needs. And these stakeholder needs are what are translated into the enterprise objectives that need to be achieved. Because the enterprise objectives, once achieved, satisfy the stakeholder needs. And from there, then we have the IT team now, or the IT objectives or strategy that comes in place that should align to each enterprise or business goal in order to enable the business achieve its goals. Once that is achieved, you satisfy stakeholder needs. And so the key role of the CIO is to ensure that alignment between enterprise goals and IT goals so that the IT goals can satisfy the enterprise goals and ultimately stakeholder needs. And this then now involves the stakeholder, the CIO understanding the business and what sort of value that IT can bring, what sort of innovation that IT can put in place to enable the enterprise achieve its strategic objectives. So this is the role of the CIO or CTO in some places.
Beautiful, beautiful, and well said. So then, I suppose you've sort of explained, where the synergy is, why it's important for organizations to have a CIO or somebody from the IT, sitting at a strategic position in an organization.
Mm.
Yeah. So before we leave this topic, I would love us to then look at why IT governance is very important for an organization. Why do you think IT governance is important for every organization?
So again, I'll go back to the fact that IT now in every organization is now an IT organization, from telcos to banks to across the spectrum. IT is strategic to any organization achieving its objectives. And so the importance of IT governance is that it ensures that IT resources are properly utilized. The organization realizes its benefits from its IT investments, and also efficiencies are brought about as a result of um, uh, using IT. And so some benefits would be, for example, generating more revenue, differentiating your organization from the next, and also issues to do with as you implement IT, you need to consider issues to do with the environment you're operating from. You have risks, various risks, cyber threats, power outages within your environment that may impact your organization. For example, if I'm running um, Uber in Zambia, we have Ulendo, which is our taxi hailing app. If I'm running such an organization which depends on IT, I need to put rules in place that will guide me. For example, firstly, on how do I protect the user data that I'm getting? Because if I don't, and there is a breach, it means that I would need to pay huge fines. If I'm in Europe, I'll be subject to the GDPR, which will fine me heavily. And that would mean the end of my business. And so without the proper IT governance in place, without the proper policies, procedures in place, I will not be able to know that I need to do a risk analysis and look at the regulatory compliance that I need to have in place and secure or protect my data in a way that will avoid me getting penalized. We look at resilience within a business. It's no secret now that as long as you're online, you are susceptible to cyber attacks. But what happens if I'm working for a bank and I get hit by a cyber attack? Do all my operations just come to a halt? Not exactly. So if I have IT governance in place, I will be aware that there's actually a likelihood of me getting a cyber attack, and I'll have things put in place to ensure that there's business continuity in an instance that I'm under attack. So things like having my backups offsite and having alternative systems to operate if the systems are not functional, and so on. And so IT governance looks at this entire spectrum because At the end of the day, its purpose is to ensure that benefits are realized, stakeholder needs or enterprise goals are achieved. If the entire bank's infrastructure data center goes down, if a bank's POS machine server goes down, ATM machine goes down, or the central place where the ATM machines connects to one router goes down, that means people cannot transact within that period, and each transaction is money for the bank. So which means if there's an outage for 3 hours, the bank would have made so much of a loss, and its enterprise objectives will not have been met because probably they have a target of how much revenue they're supposed to have at the end of the year, and that outage will affect the company's bottom line. And this is where IT governance then becomes very critical as we continue to emphasize the fact that companies need IT for them to achieve their strategic objectives. And so that is the benefit of having IT governance in place.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. As we start bringing this conversation to an end, I'd love us to look at how cybersecurity, you've talked about cybersecurity, and I mean, you can't talk about IT governance without, relating it to cybersecurity, because that's one of the biggest threats that every organization faces. Let's look at it as it relates to small businesses and startups. How far can they go with ensuring that they are cyber safe? Because I think they are quite vulnerable, mainly because of lack of budgets, or even just lack of awareness. What would be your comment on that?
So I'm very passionate about SMEs and startups because I was, doing my software development and entrepreneurship journey. I was there, and I looked at the way I handled cybersecurity issues, which was I think my main focus was on the functionality and not security, and that is still applies today. And it even applies with big corporations. If I may mention as well, you have Samsung, Apple, bring out operating systems, devices that are vulnerable, have vulnerabilities, and only patching them up later, which means their focus on cybersecurity or security issues is a bit questionable, but you understand because there's always the rush to bring something onto market versus securing it. I don't know how many times Facebook has had breaches and so, but come back to the question. SMEs are the most affected by cyber attacks, and at times we don't even hear. Most of the times we don't even hear about uh, the number of SMEs that have been hit because at times they just close up. You have ransomware attacks which have become very prevalent now. So once you have a ransomware attack as an SME, if you have an online store, or an insurance company and you're just starting out and you are hit by ransomware and you are asked to pay uh, 20, 30 Bitcoin, you don't have that sort of money, which means you've lost your data. You can't operate anymore. You don't have access to your client's information and all that. So the businesses do close. And so SMEs should deliberately um, take cybersecurity seriously for their organizations, for their startups. And basic cyber hygiene practices can be used. You don't need very complicated sort of measures to put in place. If you can afford them, well and good. But it's something that should be taken seriously. For example, if I am using my servers, okay, if I have an online business, my servers should have an up-to-date antivirus. My servers should have an up-to-date operating system. I do not expect anyone to be using Windows XP or Server 2012 that is no longer being supported by Microsoft because it's riddled with vulnerabilities. And so small things are, someone said, no, the cost and the like, well, yes, but I think it's a bit short-sighted. So have up-to-date software, have antivirus in place, have a virtual firewall in place. Most of the SMEs do not host their own systems. They're either on the cloud, yeah, mostly on the cloud. And so you can get virtual firewalls and basic software development, secure practices like encrypting data. In case you are hacked, a hacker can access your data. But if it's encrypted, that's as far as they will go. How do you authenticate users as they try to log in? You use multi-factor authentication and so on. And so there are these basic cyber hygiene practices that you put in place or that SMEs should be aware about. And with that one, I'm very passionate. Um, when I have the opportunity, we actually talk about these things with startups. We've done some workshops with a startup hub in Zambia called Bongo Hive, and they deal with startups and innovation around that. And we realized so security is a big issue because even funders now uh, are looking at asking questions around security because you do not want to fund a project that does not take security seriously, only to be penalized for a data breach. And as a funder, an investor, you lose all your money because we now have to pay the government for a data breach. So it becomes very important for SMEs to actually take cybersecurity seriously.
Beautiful and well said. And you've brought so much value. I'm sure this will be very useful information to small business owners or even startups because, now more than ever,
Yeah.
cybersecurity has become a very important aspect to every business. Well, Alinani, it's just been an absolute pleasure engaging with you and just listening to your thought leadership. You've brought a lot of value. Thank you so much. So as we bring this conversation to a close, do you have any closing remarks that you'd love to leave our listeners with?
Well, I think so. Your viewership is covers a broad spectrum, and as we have talked about, I think main focus has been on IT governance and touched a bit on cybersecurity. I think for me, the uh, main issue that I would like to leave the viewers with is that when we think of IT, let us look at it as a driver and an enabler of business. And once we think of it in that way, only then would we be able to see what sort of value can we derive from IT. How can we use IT to help us improve our revenue generation? Sometimes it's not the most complicated IT systems that you need. It may just be an Excel document, a Google sheet that you are able to update when you are on your phone and on your laptop and just keep track of certain things. Low tech, but it will still revolutionize the way you do things. So IT is a very, very strategic has a very, very strategic role in the survival of any organization, especially in our present day and age. And secondly, we've touched on issues to do with digital transformation. Um, the thing with digital transformation is it has a lot of parameters that come into play. And so if you are one that has a business and looking to use IT to bring about efficiencies or gain competitive advantage, it's a step-by-step process. And so you really, really need to consider your environment, what works for your environment, and what do you need to put in place to allow you to move from point A to B? What sort of strategies can you put in place to have that a smooth change over to IT systems and like an abrupt one, uh, so to say. So I think those are my two major issues. And thank you once again, sir, for having me on your podcast. I really hope that what has been discussed may be of value to one or two people that get to listen to this. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. You've brought so much value, and thank you so much.